Very briefly, this is the last time we're going to go over things in unemployment. Monopsony is a market with one buyer and many sellers. The opposite of monopoly. In monopoly, the seller sets the price. In monopsony, the buyer sets the price. Okay, so this is incorrect. I'll have to change it when I go home. So it's the seller setting the price. So it's like graphically, it's monopoly in reverse. We have gone over this over 2 or 3 times already. In monopoly, you have demand. Double the slope of demand, you get marginal revenue. In monopsony, you have the marginal cost curve or the supply curve, depends on the situation you have. So you have the supply curve. You double the slope of supply to get marginal expenditure. Okay, double the slope of supply to get marginal expenditure. In the labor market, the interpretation is you have one big employer like McDonald's and many job applicants. And graphically, we have gone through this last time. You have demand from the big company, supply from potentially many small workers. Marginal expenditure is the additional expenditure of hiring one additional worker. It's strictly increasing, and it's going up faster than supply curve because supply tells you how much these workers want to be paid. The marginal expenditure takes into consideration that when you hire more workers, you are giving raises to workers who otherwise would have been willing to work for less. So you're giving up everyone higher salary, and that's a lot of money, so it's higher. So the monopsony would take that into consideration, and it equates the benefit it gets from each worker from the expenditure caused by hiring one additional worker. So the intersection between demand and marginal expenditure gives you the quantity of labor to hire. Salary is given by labor supply because that's the lowest salary. This worker, this 3.25 worker, this is the last worker hired. That's the minimum wage he wants. If you pay less than $4.13, he's not going to work, basically. So you won't have enough workers. With minimum wage, no one is allowed to work less than minimum wage. So there are no cheap workers. The cheapest you can go is minimum wage. That changes the marginal expenditure because as long as you are hiring minimum wage workers, there is no additional expenditure over what the last worker wants. The last worker wants minimum wage, then you're only paying minimum wage. You're not paying a raise for everyone else. That's until you hire everyone who is willing to work for minimum wage. When you want to start hiring someone who wants more than minimum wage, by the assumption that you're paying everyone the same salary, you have to pay everyone a raise. So suddenly you need to pay a lot of money. Well, if you have 100 workers, you want to hire the 101st worker, you have to pay all of them higher salary. Now, once again, the equilibrium is the intersection between marginal expenditure and demand. Most likely, the intersection will be in the region where the marginal expenditure is vertical. The minimum wage worker is very cheap, not necessarily very cheap, but the minimum wage worker is not very expensive to hire. Each one of them, you pay them minimum wage. So the company has a lot of incentive to hire them. On the other hand, non-minimum wage worker is expensive because when you hire a non-minimum wage worker, you're giving up the right to pay minimum wage, essentially. The first moment you hire a non-minimum wage worker, you're paying everyone something higher than the minimum wage. So that's very expensive. And companies probably are not willing to do that. unless the minimum wage is really low. So for that reason, most likely the intersection is going to be somewhere in the vertical part for effective minimum wage. So we have done the math. I'll upload the video for the math before the final. Then we talk about the idea of efficiency wage, which is employer intentionally pay higher than a market clearing wage in order to induce effort. So, and the scenario for this to happen is, so the employer hires an employee to do something. However, the employer does not observe effort. He only observes outcome. So I don't know whether you work hard or not, but I do know whether you did your job well, right? I know I know the outcome, but not the effort. But now, if there's no risk, that's okay. You work hard, you do well. You don't work, you're lazy, you do poorly. That would be okay. It doesn't matter you don't observe effort. Now the problem is we also assume that there's risk. Even if you work hard, you might be unlucky, and then you get a poor result. Even if you're lazy, you might get lucky, and then the result is good. So now effort and outcome is not perfectly correlated. What do you do in this case? Well, what you do is pretty much the same as if the correlation is perfect. As long as there's some correlation, you still do the same thing. That is, you pay the worker only if the outcome is good, and you punish him, either by firing him, not giving him a bonus, or not giving him a raise, whatever. You punish the worker if the outcome is poor. Even though this might be unfair if the worker happens to be unlucky when he works hard, or it's also unfair if he's lazy but he's just lucky. It's unfair in those scenarios. But nevertheless, as long as there's some correlation, then on average it's still okay, right? On average, if you work hard, you're more likely to succeed and you're more likely to get paid. So on average, it's okay. So employee has two conflicting incentives. No one wants to work hard, so he wants to be lazy, at least put in less effort. But he doesn't want to get fired because the job pays pretty well. So if you pay well enough, the second effect would be stronger than the first effect, and the worker will work hard. So that's the idea. So by paying a high enough salary, the employer can make sure that the employee works hard. So that's the idea of incentives, bonuses, right? High salary for civil servants so that they don't corrupt. It's all the same idea. Pay high. If you pay enough, workers would be willing to work hard to keep this good paying job, right? So, but because the job pays so well, naturally there will be unemployment because there will be more people fighting for the same position than the number of positions available, right? So wage will not fall in this case. If you pay if I want you to work hard, I have to pay you well. If I pay you well, there'll be a lot of people waiting for a job. That's unemployment. All right. Unemployment benefits. We talk about the details of unemployment benefit in Hong Kong and elsewhere. So unemployment benefit usually stops when you find a job, and because of that, that gives you less incentive to find a job, or at least at the minimum, you would take your time in making sure that you get a good job before you take it, right? Because if you get a lousy job, it might not be much better than getting unemployment benefit, right? So this increase frictional unemployment, because remember, frictional unemployment is unemployment caused by people looking for jobs. So if by paying unemployment benefit, people takes longer to look for jobs. So that's increased frictional unemployment, right? So, and if there's an increase in unemployment benefit, workers are less afraid of losing their job, right? Because unemployment is less hard to endure. So to make the job attractive again, the employer will have to raise the salary, right? Think about it. Let's say McDonald's currently pays something like $34 an hour, right? McDonald's pays $34 an hour. If I tell you, if you stop working, the government's still going to pay you $30, will you work for McDonald's? No one will work for McDonald's in that case, right? You just stop working and get $30 an hour. So when there's substantial unemployment benefit, then the salary has to be a lot higher, right? But the higher the salary is, the more expensive it is for the employer, which means there will be fewer workers hired, and as a result, more unemployment, right? So this part still exists, this incentive. When you increase unemployment benefit, salary has to go up, and as a result, unemployment is going to go down, right? So in some sense, you would have higher unemployment benefit creates more unemployment, directly and indirectly. Okay. Right, externality. So this is a second to last topic, although it really includes several subparts. Right. So remember, when we talk about welfare economics, we say that demand curve is the value to consumers, supply curve is cost to suppliers, and we get the first fundamental theorem of welfare economics, which tells us that market equilibrium is efficient. Whatever that's worth to produce will get produced. But back then, we mentioned that, well, this is not true when you have things like pollution. Why? Because as a seller, I might not care about pollution, right? I have a factory that pollutes the air. I just exhaust the air through my chimney. I don't necessarily clean it up, right? Same for water or trash. I just dump all my toxic waste in trash in government landfills, and without considering the cost it would be on the society. So in this case, we don't think that the market equilibrium is efficient. If you allow sellers to just dump their waste in whatever means they want, then it won't be efficient. And there's a very good example in Hong Kong right now, right? In where? In Tin Shui Wai, right? The illegal landfills. Well, if it's up to sellers, if it's up to manufacturers, why wouldn't they find the cheapest place to displace their waste and debris, right? But then it's very good. It's a very good example because it caused substantial cost to the residents nearby. Yet, what can they do? So in these cases, we don't think market equilibrium is necessarily optimal. And how do we analyze that? So we call the impact of pollution to everyone else externality. And this is how we analyze it. Essentially, the actual cost of production is higher than what the seller perceives. For the seller, he only considered costs that he has to pay directly, right? I have to pay for my workers, I have to pay for my raw materials, I have to pay for electricity. These I consider as a seller. That's private cost, and that determines my supply. But what I don't consider is social cost in extra of that. So social cost is private cost plus external cost. And external cost is the cost to other entities other than the seller. So I, as a seller, cares about my own private cost, labor, capital. External cost would be pollution, as an example. We have other examples in a moment. So it's graphically, it's pretty simple. You just add the external cost vertically, right? So this is if the private cost is here, the vertical distance between social cost and the private cost is the external cost. This vertical distance is the external cost, right? With the higher social cost, the optimum for the society is lower than what the market equilibrium would suggest. after considering how much pollution this factory is producing, we have decided that maybe it's a better idea to limit production so that we can cut down on the pollution. So graphically and analytically, it's not very difficult to analyze. And so now, externality can also come from demand side, right? So smokers might not care about secondhand smoke. Drug addicts might not recognize the extent to which drug is harmful. So these people do not consider the whole picture, right? Let's say for about drug addicts, they are in for the immediate high, right? Who cares about the future healthcare cost? That's too far away. Now, how do we know that drug addicts might not recognize the extent to which drug is harmful? Well, you can ask the question, right? What's the most harmful drug? Do you know what's the most harmful drug? It's actually a very good question, right? What's the most harmful drug in terms of the cost to the society? Which drug do you think costs the society the most, like in general? Let me give you a few choices. Let me just give you 3 choices, or maybe 4. Maybe 4 would be fine. Cocaine, ecstasy, marijuana, alcohol. Which one do you think costs the society the most?可卡因、K 仔、大麻、酒。What do you think? Anyone disagree? Definitely alcohol by far, because of the number of people consuming it, right? The number of people consuming cocaine is like tiny in Hong Kong. It costs really not much, even in the whole. It causes a lot of harm to that individual, but to the society as a whole, it's not that expensive because very few people are taking it. Relative to alcohol, which you have direct cause of liver cancer, right? Car accidents, family abuse, emotional disturbance, job loss, you name it, the social cost is a lot higher for things like alcohol. Now, again, this is a diagram. This is a diagram from a survey in the United States asking normal people what they think is the most harmful drug versus what experts in the field believe is the most harmful drug. And so the green one is what people think, right? And as you might expect, heroin and cocaine are high on the list, followed by ecstasy, LSD, and so on. But to experts in the field, alcohol is by far the most damaging because of the number of people involved. Heroin and cocaine are pretty bad, but things like ecstasy, it's really, and this is cannabis. Cannabis is marijuana, daima. So ecstasy and cannabis, simply not very harmful, right? What happens when you take marijuana is basically like a strong painkiller, right? It's a painkiller. It's medically used as a painkiller. So you are essentially abusing painkillers, which is not good, but it's not that bad. Similarly, ecstasy makes you high. But in terms of the long-term effect, what could happen? According to the government advertisement, it might make you go to the bathroom more often. Right? So it's not that important. So people clearly, as you see from the diagram just now, people clearly do not have a good idea, which is not good, right? Especially for alcohol. It's so easy to overconsume alcohol because people don't understand how harmful it is. So Now, the way we can analyze this situation is the same as in the case when the seller pollutes the air. Is that we recognize that the benefit to the society is actually lower than what the individual think it would be. And this is calculated from subtracting the external cost from the private benefit. So the vertical distance between the two demand curves represent the external cost, right? So if you're talking about a seller polluting, you push up the supply to recognize the cost. If you're talking about buyers not recognizing the harm of alcohol, you push down the demand to recognize the external cost. Either way, what we want to show is that the optimum is lower than free market. Right? So, definition. Externality, 界外效應, is the uncompensated impact of one person's action on the well-being of others. In simple English, what I do affects you and I don't care. Okay, that's externality. Now, notice that I don't say it's necessarily a bad thing, right? I just say what I do affects you. So it could be good or it could be bad. Now, normally we think about bad things, so that's called negative externality. That includes things like pollution. It affects you negatively. But there are also positive externality. So what I do benefits you, but I don't care. And that's also not efficient, right? Because let's say, like, if in a class, if everyone keeps quiet, then it benefits everyone, right? If you keep quiet, it benefits others, right? But if someone doesn't care, he just likes to talk very loud in class, then it hurts everyone else. And it's better, that will be a negative externality. In a positive externality, what would be a good example in university, right? Let's say something like, if I prepare my teaching better, it benefits you, but it doesn't actually benefit me very much. Well, it does, because there's CTE, so that's not a good example. You need something that actually benefits others, but then it doesn't affect me. Things like, things like going to like student debate, being an educator, being an adjudicator in student debates. That pretty much doesn't help me at all, right? Even if I help students out with their student activities, university doesn't really recognize that so much, so it doesn't really affect me. But it helps the student a lot. If you have ever tried to be like a committee in the student organizations, you know it's so hard to find teachers to be adjudicators. No one wants to help you out because there's no incentive to do so, right? So either way, it's a market failure, because the market fails to efficiently allocate resources. And that's because either the buyers or the sellers ignore the external effect of their actions when deciding how much to demand or supply. Sellers don't care about pollution. It doesn't affect me directly, I don't care. Drug addicts don't care about the healthcare cost to society, so they take drugs. So the market mechanism failed in this case, and we want to think about what you can do, right? What you can do. And actually, competition often makes matter worse. This is actually the worst thing about externalities. It's actually make things worse. Think about pollution, right? You have two factories. One, and they're producing the same product. The production process is polluting. So one seller is responsible, and it cleans up after itself. It's expensive. So it's costly. It has to take that into consideration in pricing. Then there is another seller who decides that it's not going to care about pollution, and it's going to just pollute its way, and keep the price low. Who is going to win under competition? The cheaper one, right? The cheaper one. This is essentially what's happening in Taobao. Things like, in places where there's intense competition, it's very, very easy for the competitor with the most lax standard wins, right? Since in Taobao, what do you see? You see a price and a photo. It's pretty common in Taobao to buy things where the photo doesn't match what you get. What can you do? You can send it back if you want, but many people don't. So competition often makes things worse. You compete to be the one that pollute the most. You compete to be the one that clean up the least, because it's expensive to clean up. Right. So we talk about drugs, and we also use automobiles as examples. Let's first think about why drug is bad. Why is drug bad? I mean, I'm talking about things like cocaine, right? Why do we care? Why do you care? I mean, probably almost none of you take drugs, right? So why would you care? In particular, when I say you care, that means that why would you want the government to spend your tax dollar on drug prevention programs, right? Why do you care? How does that affect you? How does that affect you? That people take drugs. Now, some people might have family members who take drugs. Well, that would be similar. That would be similar to what happens when you have a direct cause, right? It directly affects you. So, how does a drug addict that we do not know, have not even seen, how does his behavior affect you? Right? How does it affect you? Why do you care? Okay. What do you think? Why do you care?
Safety.
Safety. Okay, that's a good reason. Maybe drug addicts are dangerous. They might want to mock you for money for drugs. That's one possibility. Although I think in Hong Kong that's not very true in general, directly. Like drug addicts usually hide. But then there's another possibility is that triads, right? Like mafia is supported by drugs. So that's one possibility, safety. What else? What's another possibility? Medical costs is yes, very good point. Unless you're willing to let drug addicts fall dead on the street without cleaning them up. Otherwise, you as a taxpayer is going to clean up after them. When they get sick, your money take care of them. And that's probably not a very good idea because treatment is a lot more expensive than prevention. So for that reason, public safety and healthcare costs, we don't want drug addicts, right? Okay, so I have that. How does the Hong Kong government tries to correct for this? So how do we correct for this? First, is selling drugs legal? Dude, if it's legal, you won't have infernal affairs, right? Like all those gangster movies, they are all transporting drugs. Why? It's illegal. If it's legal, you don't need the triads to transport drugs. There will be no more movies in Hong Kong. So first, it's illegal to sell these kind of drugs, restricted drugs in Hong Kong. Second, less famous, not featured in any movies, is Hong Kong is a very good treatment program for cocaine addicts. Right? Hong Kong is very famous for its treatment program. You might have heard it, 美沙酮. So Hong Kong have clinics that offer like alternatives to drug addicts to help them get off cocaine. So rehabilitation is paid by the government. So what about automobiles? Why do we care about having too many cars? Why? There are two reasons. The first one, probably you can think of, was the obvious one. Traffic jam, that's one, right? Traffic jam. The more cars you have, for the same amount of road, you get more traffic congestion. So that's one, and that's an externality, right? When I drive my car on the road, I slow down everyone else. That's a negative externality. So traffic congestion is definitely a negative externality. What else? What does car emit? Pollution, right? CO2 and all sorts of other all sorts of particles. So pollution and traffic congestion, both. In Hong Kong, I'd say is not so good. There's definitely congestion once in a while, and there's some pollution, but that's nothing compared to Beijing, right? Just horrible, both the air quality and the congestion. So how does the Hong Kong government try to correct for this? Now this is the difference between Hong Kong, I would say, and Beijing. Right? In Hong Kong, we don't have a car industry, so we can totally try to dissuade people from buying any cars. So, do you know how much tax you have to pay if you want to own a car in Hong Kong? Okay, let me tell you. So in Hong Kong, let's say you want to buy a new car, a new gasoline or a new diesel car. Especially diesel, I'm not too sure. Gasoline, definitely. For gasoline car, you have to pay 100% tax for a new car. So if the car originally cost 200,000, it's going to cost you 400,000 in Hong Kong. Yes, 100% tax. So that's when you buy the car, right? Every year you have to pay somewhere between $3,000 to $8,000 in registration fee every single year. In order to be eligible to pay that to pay that money to register, in order to be eligible to register, you have to have your car checked up every single year, starting from the 5th year onwards. So that's at least another $3,000. Gasoline, $6 tax per liter, and gasoline is currently $14. So that's what, $6 out of 14 is tax. So if you drive frequently in Hong Kong, you can easily spend several $1,000s on gas every single month. Finally, parking. In Hong Kong, the government does usually, in terms of zoning restrictions, do not permit having too many parking spaces in a particular real estate development. A typical new development would only have one parking space per 4 to 5 units, even in relatively luxurious developments, right? So that's very restrictive, right? Because if you think about it, if I'm able to afford an apartment that costs me 10 million, despite how expensive I just mentioned it is to own a car in Hong Kong, it's still not very expensive, right? If I can pay 10 million to buy an apartment, I can certainly pay several $100,000 to buy a car. So the government also restricts the number of cars by imposing very strict zoning requirements. You only have one parking space per 4 units, right? So what can you do? So very expensive to own a car in Hong Kong. The government tries really hard to dissuade people from driving. It wasn't very effective. I can't say it's not very effective. It's because, all we know is the number of cars in Hong Kong have been growing substantially. But that is not the same as saying that the policy is not effective, because it could be the case that without these tax, the number of cars would have grown even further. Right? Given the average income of a median family, of a middle class family in Hong Kong, owning a car would not be very expensive were it not for all these measures, right? If you think about places like, if you think about China, car ownership in China will be higher than Hong Kong, despite the fact that in many places they have lower income than us. But that's because we also do not have the high cost involved in owning a car. So we can't say the policy is ineffective. Most likely, without these policies, then the number of cars in Hong Kong will grow even further, and will become Beijing. Right. Now, education is a good example of externality. Why? Now, I'm talking about externality, right? So the fact that your education helps you is not a reason. So why do we care about education? Why do we want people getting educated? Right? Okay, these days I think a lot of the higher ups in Hong Kong might have second thoughts about providing education to you all, right? So, but generally speaking, why do we provide subsidized education? What does that give you as a society? Productivity, right? Presumably, if you come to get an education, you become more productive. Now, this is most pronounced. This effect is the strongest when you start with basic education, right? When you go from no education to some basic education, at least people become literate. So literate people are a lot more productive than illiterate people. So that's very big effect. Now, but then once you get to university, you have to think about whether that's a very strong motivation anymore, right? Think about subjects like humanities. I would say that there are some subjects that are not directly applicable to work. So what would be the justification for their existence? Why do we need philosophy majors? Why? In fact, you can ask why do you need economics major? So why not everyone just study BBA? What do you think?
Lower the crime rate.
I'll say that's a good direction, right? When people are educated, you think they make better decisions for society as a whole, right? When you go educated, you go to vote. In some sense, that's why you have things like Occupy Central, right? Because people are educated, they have their ideals, and they are willing to follow their ideals. So that's I would say, the objective of higher education, is to make you a better citizen, right? So, better citizens. And how does the Hong Kong government try to promote education? Now, Hong Kong is a very good example because we almost use all possible ways of motivating people to get education. And we can start with, let's go from the back, right? Let's start from university, because you're in university right now. How do we encourage people to go to university? We've mentioned this before. You pay $40,000 a year. It costs $300,000 on average to provide your education. So you're subsidized, right? So university is subsidized. Okay, let's go. What about secondary school and primary school? It's also subsidized because you pay almost nothing. So that's one, it's subsidized. But that's not it, right? What is special about Hong Kong's education system that you might have to learn when you are studying, like, subject, right? What do you call that in English? When you're studying, like, when you study about the social issues when you're in primary school or secondary school, right? What's the special feature of Hong Kong's education system? Compulsory, that's right. And I like the term. then this joke was so yeah， Hong Kong in the past was 9年強迫性教育 ，it's just wrong Chinese right？ 強迫教育咪強迫教育咯。咁啊 ，like these days I think it's actually mandatory till secondary 6, so it's actually 12 years of mandatory education now, right? So it's forced. It's actually illegal. It's actually this is very interesting because so by mandatory education it means that it's legal for the parents to not let you go to school, right? It's not illegal for it's not that the child is not committing any offense by not going to school. It's the parents that is being charged, right? So if you refuse to go to school and your parents let you go along with it, your parents actually commit a crime, but not you. That's the way it works. Finally, elementary school. Sorry, not elementary school. Kindergarten. This is relatively new. In Hong Kong, how do we motivate motivate kids to go to kindergarten? Or rather, how do we motivate parents to send their kids to kindergarten? Oh, we have one sign up, so this is the last one. This is relatively new, because in the past, kindergarten is actually not subsidized. In Hong Kong, you do not need to go to kindergarten. Do you know that? Kindergarten is not required. You are completely free to apply to primary school directly without any kindergarten education. Now, whether you can get into any elementary school, that's another issue. Well, actually, you can, because you can always go to government. You can always participate in the central allocation scheme, which will guarantee you a place. But still, if you don't have kindergarten education, you're most likely not going to get into the ones you want, right? So in Hong Kong, it's pretty much required. And the government nowadays give vouchers, what you call vouchers, 學券制. The government give vouchers, and the difference between voucher and other forms of subsidy is money follows the student. You decide which kindergarten you want to go, and the government gives the kindergarten the money that is allocated to you. That's unlike elementary and secondary school, because elementary and secondary school, the government says, okay, you have that many students, that means you need that many teachers, and the government pays the teachers, not per head, but per teacher, right? So that's a difference, right? So we can summarize what we have seen just now into two types. One is you can use a command and control type of policy. Ban drug sales. You regulate behavior directly. You mandate education, force people to go to school. So this type of method is relatively simple, right? You just need a law. You make things illegal to do, although it would depends on the type of requirement, it might be difficult to regulate. A lot of money is spent on fighting drugs, right? You don't want people to take drugs, you ban drugs. You have to have police to investigate drug cases. So that's costly too. Education in Hong Kong is probably not very costly to enforce, right? You ask people to go to school, most of them do, very few would skip school. Then you have the market-based policies. Instead of forcing people to do what you say, you can provide incentives so that they do what you want them to do on their own. So that would be taxes and subsidies, right? So there are these two types of policies. And the first one is pretty straightforward. Now we're going to talk about the second one. Right, once again, the diagram, in terms of the diagram, is actually quite simple. What you want is, you want to impose a tax that corrects for the social cost. Right, so to correct for the external cost. So the difference between social cost and private cost. Let's say I hurt you by $10 per output I produce, right? What do you want to do as a government? Ideally, you want to tax me $10 per unit, right? That forces me to take into consideration how much I hurt you. I hurt you by $10 per unit, then the government forced me to pay $10. Not to you, but to the government. It doesn't compensate you directly, but it does generate revenue for the government, and the government can compensate you if it chooses to. Right, so ideally the tax should exactly cover the difference between social cost and private cost. Right, so that means the mathematics is exactly the same as any tax. It's just one particular form of tax. The mathematics is the same. The tax amount per unit equals to the external cost. This is called Pigovian tax, after Arthur Pigo, so an early 20th century Cambridge economist. So, tax the amount of the external cost. Now, in an exam question or assignment question, usually you will be given the external cost. Either you're given the external cost or you're given the social cost, right? So, what you need to do is to, when you're asked to calculate the Pigovian tax, then it's going to be the external cost, right? So if you're given the social cost, you have to subtract the private cost to get the external cost. Tax amount equals to external cost. It's very simple. I heard you $10 per unit, the government should tax me $10. That would force me to take how much I heard you into consideration. It's that simple. It's simple, but if you think about it, it's not necessarily easy to implement in some cases, right? If you're talking about damages that hurts a lot of people, or it's hard to measure the actual impact, it could be hard to figure out the right amount to tax. So that's one problem. Another problem is, well, you need a big bureaucracy to handle the tax, right? You might need a new government agency just to handle the tax. With that in mind, sometimes you might not want the money to actually go to the government. One good example in Hong Kong is the plastic levy, right? The plastic bag tax. In Hong Kong, there's a 50 cents tax if you want a plastic bag from any merchant, right? The tax does not go to the government. The merchant gets to keep the tax. The merchant gets to keep the money instead of paying the government. Why? Because of the administrative cost. Accounting for all the 50 cents and giving the money to the government is going to take more money than the money collected by the levy. So there's no point in trying to pay the government. So that's one example of trying to get away from the bureaucracy involved in charging a Pigovian tax. Finally, corruption is a big problem, right? Whenever you have such type of tax, corruption is a big problem. And it's just not so. Not only is you're concerned about where the money goes, you're also concerned about whether the policy actually works. If a government official gets to choose, well, gets to decide who can produce or not, right? Then there is very high incentive to bribe the official. So if I get to decide which one of you get to go to exchange, well, obviously you want me to make me happy, right? Because you want to go on exchange. So same idea. Think about if we're talking about millions or potentially billions of dollars involved, there's a huge incentive to bribe officials in order to get permits to operate. So these are problems. So private solutions is something that economists considered later on. So as I mentioned, Pigou is an early 20th century economist, right? So the idea of Pigovian tax is at least like 100 years old. On the other hand, a private solution, obviously private solution exists, but the study of private solution didn't didn't come into attention until probably in the 50s or 60s last century. So it's in terms of academic research, this is much newer. So the study of private solution in externality is the realization that interested party can enter into a contract to internalize an externality. Now let's think about this again. If I operate a factory that hurts you, one possibility is you ask the government to regulate me, right? I hurt you, you vote for a government that regulates me, charge me tax, so that I would not produce so much pollution. That's one way. But that's another way, right? Without a government, it is also possible that you negotiate with me so that I will limit my pollution. In particular, it's a possibility that you can pay me in order to produce less pollution, right? It's a possibility. It's not a very fair possibility, right? Most people would probably find it unfair that you, as the victim, has to pay me to not hurt you. But put aside the fact that it's unfair to most people, it is a possibility. If the damage I cause you is severe enough, and there's no other legal remedy, it is a possibility for you to pay me to operate less pollution. So this recognition can be formalized in this example. Let's say we have a factory owner. So the factory owner has to choose between operating the factory and shutting down the factory. Operating the factory generates $100 for the factory owner, and if shutting down the factory means for only $30. But the factory pollutes the environment. So if the factory is operational, the residents get 50, whereas if it's shut down, the residents get 150. Now in this situation, it should be obvious to you that the efficient outcome is for the factory not to operate, because it only generates $70 of additional income for the factory owner, but it hurts the residents by $100. So if in an efficient outcome, you would not want the factory to operate. What we're interested is in whether does it matter who gets to decide the factory can operate or not. Now, your first instinct might be it does matter, because if the residents get to decide, then obviously they would not allow the factory to operate. That's true. That's pretty simple, right? From the residents' point of view, if they get to decide, they would obviously not want to suffer the pollution. The residents won't allow the factory to operate. Now here's the interesting case. Suppose instead the factory owner can decide whether the factory can operate or not. Now your first instinct might be that the factory owner will certainly operate. But if you think about it, if you follow the logic I just told you, if private negotiation is possible, the residents can certainly pay the factory owner $70 and ask him not to operate the factory. It's better off for everyone. I pay you so that you won't pollute. You won't suffer. I earn the same amount of money, or possibly even more, right? If you pay me slightly more. So in this example, you can see that it actually doesn't matter who gets to decide whether the factory can operate. Now this concept, if you think about it now, it sounds reasonable, but then it's a pretty big insight when it's first raised. This idea of right is not something that economists used to consider a lot. So like in Hong Kong, it's a special case because before the DSE curriculum, when you have the A levels economic curriculum, the curriculum emphasized a lot on property rights due to the specific influence of Stephen Jones, right? So if you are from the A level, well, obviously none of you will be anymore. But if for the students from the A level curriculum, they would be very familiar with these notions about rights, who gets to decide what to do with things, right? So in this case, what it's raised, the interesting point that's being raised is that it doesn't matter who has the right, as long as they can negotiate, the efficient outcome will be. So the neoclassical Coase theorem, suggests that the initial allocation of property rights does not matter if transaction cost is 0. On first sight, this does not seem to relate to what we're talking about, but it's precisely what we're talking about. Property right is not necessarily about tangible stuff. Property right is also about rights to do things, in this case. So what the Coase theorem suggests here is that it doesn't matter who gets the right to decide what to do. If people can negotiate, then then the efficient outcome will occur, regardless of who gets to decide initially. So transaction cost includes actual cost of negotiation. For example, if we need to negotiate between lawyers, then it's going to be expensive, right? If we're talking about I am causing let's say I cost you $50 of harm. You're not going to hire a lawyer to suit me for $50, right? The lawyer would charge you $1,000 or more, at least $1,000 for an hour, right? Writing a letter would cost you $1,000. So there's no point. So that's one problem, right? Because it says that the Coase theorem only says that, well, if we can negotiate, then the efficient outcome will occur. If we can negotiate. But if in cases where the benefit is too small and the cost of negotiation is very high, then it might not happen. I hurt you by a small amount. You probably won't ask a lawyer to sue me. Well, but then fortunately in the society you have other remedies, right? You can call the police, which is free. You can also go to the court. In Hong Kong there's a court for small monetary disputes. Once again, that's much cheaper. Then there's also the intangible difficulty in negotiation. If you think about it, maybe one-to-one negotiation is simple. What if the pollution I generate hurts thousands of people? How do you negotiate with thousands of people? Much more difficult. And what if the damage is uneven? Or maybe even I benefit some of you and hurt some of you. It would be very difficult to negotiate in those cases. So the Coase theorem is more like a hypothetical ideal case, right? In this fairyland where there's no cost in negotiation, we and all of us can costlessly communicate, then the efficient outcome will always occur. We can always talk it out. But obviously in reality, negotiation is not free, which means it doesn't necessarily get the efficient outcome. Now the Coase theorem is named after Ronald Coase, who won the Nobel Prize in 1991 for his contribution in this area. Ronald Coase is one of the teachers of Stephen Chung, which is why Stephen Chung's emphasize on property rights so much. Ronald Coase famous paper on this topic is called the problem of firms. Now you might think about why is there any problem about firms, companies, right? Companies exist. To Ronald Coase, that's a big problem. If you think about it, why do we need companies at all? Why do we need companies at all? We don't need, well, if I am an employer, I need workers. I just hire you through contracts, and if I need more workers, I can just sign contracts with every one of them. If we need to buy things from each other, we can sign contracts with each other. We pay and we just pay money. Why do you need companies? Right? If you think about it that way, in a market, it seems like there's no need for companies. I hire you, you hire me, like it's all going to work. Except obviously it doesn't work. Think about what a type of nightmare that would be if you try to operate a big organization in this method, right? Every time the CEO of HSBC wants someone to do his work, he has to negotiate a new contract. That doesn't work. So Ronald Coase's contribution is recognizing that companies is an organization. The company is an institute that is created to overcome transaction costs. So that becomes what you call the new institutional economics. It's the recognition that all types of institute, companies, governments, court, they all arise in order to overcome transaction. So because of in the actual world, transaction cost is not zero. In order to facilitate transaction, you need institutes. You need ways for people to negotiate. So for example, precisely because it's not costly for thousands of victims of a factory pollution to negotiate with a factory, that we have governmental and environmental agency to regulate pollution. The government is an institute that arises to overcome the fact that the transaction cost in reducing pollution. So the Coase theorem says that if there's no cost in negotiation, there's no need for anything. That you don't need a government. People can just negotiate. You can ask me to reduce my pollution, and we'll figure it out. But if negotiation is not free, which is what you have in the real world, then maybe you can't negotiate with me directly. So we have a government which regulates pollution. So that's what Ronald Coase contributed. Right. So private solutions are often hard to implement. Pollution affects thousands, if not millions of people. Could be hard to negotiate. Monitoring could be too expensive or difficult for individuals to handle. I think this is a very good example in Hong Kong, right? In Hong Kong, you have a very good example, the lead in water. Without some outside help, it could probably be very difficult for individual families to know whether your water source have lead or not. It has no taste. So you can't just figure it out without laboratory testing. And how do you know if your child is facing lead poison? Well, you know if he becomes too dumb, but that's probably too late. In order to know early, you need a blood test. Once again, it's probably not something you would do on your own. So it could be difficult to monitor. And unenforceable contracts. Not even if you try to come up with a private solutions, it's not necessarily enforceable. Now, what would be example? Example would be a prenuptial contract, like a pre-marriage contract. Right? Rich people very often have that kind of stuff. So a rich person married that means a rich male marries a pretty but not as rich girl. That's usually the way. Maybe a star. Now the rich male is afraid that the female is aiming for his money instead of his attractiveness, right? Okay. And typically, when a divorce happens, the court will award a proportion of the male's wealth to the female, the husband's wealth to the wife. Which, if you think about it, is a quick way for a girl to make money, as long as you manage to find men who are rich enough, right? You marry a rich man, you divorce him, get part of his wealth, marry someone else, start over again. It does happen in Western countries, this kind of activity. In order, then, if you think about it, this obviously is kind of bad. So rich people very often sign contracts before marriage. That the contract specify in case of a divorce, who gets what. Very often, if the man is a lot richer than the woman, then the man basically specified that, okay, I'm going to keep all my wealth. You're going to get X amount. You can't ask for more. That kind of contract is common in the West, but I believe it's unenforceable in Hong Kong. You can't do that in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, when a divorce happens, there's a very high chance that the wife is going to get a substantial portion of the wealth of the husband. And how do you get around that? Don't get married, right? Richard Lee didn't marry Isabella Leung, right? Isabella gave birth to 2 kids, but they never married. So there technically is not divorce, which means no money change hands. So it does happen. So public good. So public good is related to externality, as we'll see in a moment, because it's because what one people do affects someone else. Now consider the type of good that we have been considered so far: an apple or a cell phone. That we have used cell phones since day one as an example of a good. So what's so special about an apple or a cell phone? Now let's say for a cell phone, right? If I keep the cell phone to myself, you can't have it. It's in my hands. This is called excludability. The property in which a person can be prevented from using it. If I hold it here, right? If I hold it here, you can't use it. That's called excludability. Okay, I can eat my cell phone, but let's say when I'm using my cell phone, you can't use it. So that's called rivalry in consumption. Property of a good whereby one person's use diminishes other person's use, possibly to zero. Okay. So all the goods we talked about have this property. Cell phones, laptops, apples, oranges, they all have this property. When one person uses it, another person can't use it. And you can keep people out from your good. These type of good, we call private good. We call them private good. So there are 4 types of good based on whether they have these 2 characteristics. The ones we have been talking about are private goods, excludable, and rival in consumption. It's here. You can't use it, right? You can't use it. This is not very attractive, though. This is like a $1,000 Redmi Note 2. Probably I should hold an iPhone 6s, right? Then it will be more attractive. But these are private goods. Now we're going to talk about public goods, which is the polar opposite. Not excludable and not rival in consumption. What does that mean? Think about it. That means, first, I can't stop you from using it. Second, we can use it together at the same time. So it's completely different. Then third, there's common resources, which is rival in consumption but not excludable. So I can't stop you from using it, but your use diminishes my use, and my use diminishes your use. That's what we're going to talk about after public good, right? And finally, club goods, excludable and non-rival in consumption. So I can stop you from using it, but my use does not affect your use, and your use does not affect my use. What would be a good example? this is harder to think of, but the name club good implies things like that happens in a club facilities, but then most facilities have capacity, so that would not be a very good example. What I think would be a good example would be something that is like music, like digital music or full digital content, right? Digital content that under paywall would be top goods, right? Because it's digital content, so many people can share at the same time. For example, think about something like Pandora or Spotify, where you pay to listen to music. Now, we can both listen to music online, and my use doesn't affect your use, right? But then the music is behind a paywall. You have to pay in order to listen to the music. So that would be an example. Because even though we can use it together, and we won't be affecting each other, nevertheless, it is possible to keep one of us from using it. That would be excludable. Right, so we have different examples. Now we can talk about public good first. The case when you can't stop people from using it, and my use does not affect your use, and your use does not affect my use. And the issue with public good is primarily the question how to fund it. It's not now. So far, we usually say that the price you charge is related to marginal cost, right? In competitive market, price equals to marginal cost. In monopoly, you have price equals to marginal revenue, giving you quantity, and then you substitute into demand curve to get the price. In this case, there's no marginal cost. In a competitive market, that would mean the price should be zero. Even worse is that it's non-excludable. How are you supposed to charge people if you can't prevent people from using it? The typical example of a public good is a lighthouse, right? A lighthouse. So a lighthouse, like the one China built recently. So this is the South Sea. And China decides to build a lighthouse, and the lighthouse shines light out, right? And if you think about it, there's no way Chinese can prevent a US ship from taking advantage of the light provided by the Chinese lighthouse. So lighthouse is used for the dismantle exercise here. Think about what to do. You build a light. So the lighthouse can guide multiple ships at the same time, right? It can guide Chinese ships as well as US ships as well as any ships from any country. You just need one lighthouse to guide all the ships. So it's non-rivalry. The guidance it provides benefits everyone. So guiding my ship doesn't affect guiding your ship. It's non-excludable because as long as your lighthouse is operational, the light and the digital signal it sends out benefits everyone around. You can't stop them from using it. So how are you supposed to charge them? And obviously, in some cases, while in some cases it doesn't matter. For example, in this particular case, right, China builds it in the South Sea, without any intention of charging anything. But think about if this is built by a private enterprise. If the lighthouse is supposed to be built by a private enterprise and there's no way to charge the ships around, how are you supposed to recoup the fixed cost of building the lighthouse? What do you do? So this is called the free rider problem. because everyone gets to use your service for free without paying. This is like your friends taking a ride in your car without paying. That's why it's called a free rider problem. And if everyone tries to free ride and wait for someone else to pay, the public good might not even be provided, right? Let's say we all agree we need to clean the room, right? We need to clean the room. We need to clean the room. But then everyone just sit here, wait for someone else to clean the room. Then the room will not be cleaned. The room does not know how to clean itself. Even though cleaning the room might benefit all of us. Right? So free riding is a big problem in this case. If you can't stop people from using it for free. Now, we're going to use this numerical example, and you can see why it's a big problem. It's very curious. Let's first start with this case where, let's say we're building a road, right? We're building a road leading to these three families, David, John, and Paul. And they each have a willingness to pay. David is willing to pay 50, John is willing to pay 40, Paul is willing to pay 30. And let's say the road costs $100 to build. Right? The road costs $100 to build. Should it be built? And can the three agree to fund it? It should be clear to you that the road is too expensive for any one of them to build on their own. So you need, in fact, it's too expensive for any two of them to build on their own. So the three of them have to cooperate if they want to build. So the first question is, should it be funded? If you look at it, the benefit the total benefit is 50 plus 40 plus 30, and that's 120, which is bigger than the cost. So yes, it should be built. But can the three agree to fund it? Let's think about whether that's possible. The logic we're going to use is, let's just assume they have agreed to fund it. Right? Let's just assume that they have agreed to fund the road. Will any of them regret this decision and change their mind? Will anyone change his mind? Let's think about it. Starting with David. Okay. Starting with David. If David leaves, right? If he changes his mind, well, who do you have left? You have John and Paul. How much can they pay? They can pay 40 plus 30, which is 70, and that's smaller than the cost of 100. Which means if David changes his mind and say, I'm not going to participate, then the road will not be built. And since it is beneficial for all, it is beneficial for the road to be built, right? You can think about a way to separate the cost that benefits all of them. You can separate a way of, so let's say, for example, let's say we're going to use this cost sharing, right? Let's say we're going to use something like would 40, let's say something like 40, 40, 30, 30, or something like 45, right? 45, 35, or something like that. Okay, 45, 30, 20. You can think of a cost sharing where everyone gets some benefit. Right? It is possible you can figure out something like that. Everyone gets some benefit. So you can, okay, so this is, I just come up with this out of my mind, right? But it does exist. You can think about different ways too. You can think about a way where, oh, sorry, this does not add up to, okay, something like that. You can think about a way which you can share the cost of 100, and everyone still gets something. That would be beneficial. But if David decides, well, I don't want that, I want to quit, and if he quits, he doesn't pay, but the world would not be built because David and because John and Paul alone won't be able to afford it. So the public will not be provided. So the public will not be provided, and since we have figured out a way where David also benefits from the public good, so he will not quit. Similarly, you can think about what happens to John if John quits. David plus Paul together can pay for 50 plus 30, which is more than 100. Public good will not be provided. Since net benefit bigger than 0, John will not quit, right? So same logic. And finally, for Paul, Paul has the biggest incentive to quit because he pays the least, right? If Paul quits, David plus John together can pay at most 50 plus 40, which still is more than 100. So Paul will not quit. Quit, not quite. Okay. It's gone. Okay, I'll do it again. So if the cost is just 60, which is cheaper than before, and if you think about what David has in his mind, he would think about John plus Paul can pay in total 40 plus 30, which is bigger than the cost of 60. So the good will be provided even if David quits. So he wants to quit. For John, if he quits, David plus Paul in total can pay 50 plus 30, once again bigger than the cost of 60. He wants to quit. And finally, Paul, he think about, okay, if I quit, David and John together can pay 50 plus 40, which is 90, bigger than the cost of 60, so he also wants to quit. So we have a very curious situation where when the cost of the public good is expensive, everyone agrees to participate and stick with it. But when the cost is low, everyone wants to quit. And what happens when everyone wants to quit? The public good will not be provided, right? There's a curious case here. The cheaper it goes, the harder it is for the public good to be provided because of free riding. When the good is expensive, you can't free ride. You know that if you try to free ride, there will be no public good. But in the case of when the public good is cheap, it is actually possible for you to free ride and you still get to enjoy the public good because, oh, you see, the others can pay for it, and I don't need to pay out of my own pocket. The problem is, if everyone thinks about it this way, then the public good would not be provided. there is this story where you see you have there's a village, there's a village that decides to have a celebration, and the villagers all agree to bring a bottle of wine to share, right? So on the day of the festival, everyone brought their bottle of wine, pour it into a big bucket, and everyone get a cup. When everyone tastes the wine, it turns out it tastes like water. What happened? Well, so it was agreed that everyone is going to bring a bottle of wine to share together. Everyone poured it into the bucket and everyone takes a sip. The problem is, everyone was thinking that, oh, I don't need to bring my own wine. I don't need to bring wine since I only need to bring water. One bottle of water won't be. You can't tell one bottle of water from a bucket of wine. But when everyone thinks the same way, the bucket of water becomes a bucket of water. The bucket of wine becomes a bucket of water. It's kind of the reverse of Jesus' miracle, right? Now we have wine to water because of free riding. So this is the problem here. Free riding is usually a bad idea because you actually made it more difficult to provide what would be in everyone's well-being. So what do you do? Well, you can obviously use government. You can always ask the government to step in, right? The government says, look, you all have to contribute to build the road. There is no choice. You can't opt out of paying tax. So the government can say, look, the benefit of the road outweighs the cost. So it should be built. We're going to impose a tax on the three of you. The cost is $60, so each one of you pay $20. All of you should benefit, right? Because even poor benefits from the road by $30. So a tax of $20 on everyone will give everyone some benefit. So in this example, right? If the government says everyone pays $20, David gets 30 minus 20, which is 30. John gets 40 minus 20, which is 20. And Paul gets 30 minus 20, which is 10. Everyone gets something positive, and the public good is provided. This method is used a lot. National defense, police force, fire service, basic research, all these are paid by tax, and it benefits everyone. These has to be done because these type of service have a very strong public good component. Think about national defense. Even if you don't pay for the army, it still protects you, right? The army still protects you. In some sense, Hong Kong is certainly free riding on China in this aspect. We don't pay for the national defense of China, but yet we are protected by the People's Liberation Army. So that's a good example of free riding. Fire service. Without fire service, what would happen? A fire could easily burn down a whole block. So, can you say that, look, the fire is on the other side of the block, I'm not going to pay for it, right? Whoever is on fire pays for it. That doesn't work very well. So the government used tax dollars to fund fire service. But these are good examples of public goods funded by government. But right. But then, even if you have government, sometimes it's difficult because it's not necessarily easy to spread the cost around. So take, for example, the building of an incinerator. Incinerator would be a good idea in Hong Kong, generally speaking, because we're running out of landfills. So eventually we have to figure out another way instead of just putting all our trash in the dirt. So we need something like an incinerator would be a good idea. So the problem is, where should you build the incinerator? Unlike building a road where you can split the cost, the cost of the incinerator is not so much its building cost, but rather the location. Whoever lives next to the incinerator can guarantee that your house value would drop dramatically, right? If I build an incinerator next to your home, probably no one would want to buy your home. So this type of cost is hard to spread. Unless you have something in mind like the government buying up all the real estate near the incinerator. Otherwise, it's just not possible to perfectly compensate the residents near the incinerator. So, what do? There are no good answers. If there is good answer, Hong Kong would have built the incinerator already. But we haven't, because it's just too difficult to overcome the opposition. It's a public good, it serves the whole city, but we can't spread the cost, which makes it difficult. Everyone wants to free ride. This is called NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard. Yes, we all agree that we need an incinerator, but we want it somewhere else. What do? Although public good is usually provided by the government, that is not saying that there is no private funding for public good. So many public goods are funded by advertisers. A good examples would be Gmail, Facebook, TVB. You pay none for these, but they are well funded. For example, this example, so this is what? Meijie, right? This is a cooking show in Hong Kong. And every episode of this cooking show features this particular brand of chicken soup and this particular brand of chicken sauce. They use it in every single episode, even when they are cooking congee. 煮粥都要落雞湯，煮粥都要落雞汁嘅。Why? Well, obviously because the show was funded by this particular company, right? That's a prime example of a public good funded by private source. TVB signal can be received by multiple families without affecting each other. It's completely free. In fact, it's not possible to block you from receiving the analog signal. Like, we can block everyone from receiving it, but we can't block one single individual family from receiving the signal. So it's pretty much a public good. And how do you get over the how do you get over the typical problem of public good? By funding it with advertisement instead of charging individual client. What about Gmail and Facebook? Gmail and Facebook sell advertisement too, right? You probably have noticed that. Now, what Gmail and Facebook have over TVB is Gmail and Facebook knows a lot about you, which TVB doesn't. And usually this is the time when I would. So, meet Coate, which used to live in the Atlantic Ocean with his family, but now they're basically all dead. Why? We're talking about a whole like species of, right? Now, the North Atlantic Ocean has basically lost all its fish stock, Because fishing has gone from this type of old man in the sea, Moby Dick, this Moby Dick type of fishing method, to this type of fishing, modern fishing method. Now this is a modern fishing problem. And the way modern fishing works is you lower a very long net to the bottom of the ocean, and then you sail your ship across the ocean, and the net would catch anything from the ocean floor all the way up to the top of the sea. And as you drive, it catches up everything inside. You pull them up. That's your catch. This is a very destructive method of fishing. It's very efficient. It catches everything in your way, but it's very destructive because it doesn't discriminate between mature fish and baby fish, right? So it destroys the fish stock very quickly. And in the case of Atlantic Northwest cod fishery, it's a very old industry. It has evolved around the coastline has evolved around this cod fishery for over 500 years, longer than the history of the United States. As long as there have been people settling in North America, they have been fishing. But due to technical improvements and mismanagement, cods were increasingly overfished. By how much? Now, this is this is data from 1850s to the year 2000. Now, the amount of fish caught was increasing. There were yearly variations, but the general trend was that it's increasing slowly. More and more fish were caught. The big difference came from 1950s onwards with technology improvements. What do you have? These big nets that I mentioned, sonar technology, right? Sonar technology became widely used during Second World War. After Second World War, technology spread to fishery. So in the 1950s, you have sonar, which tells you where the fish are. With this technology, the amount of fish caught grew explosively in just 10 years, right? We're talking about 200,000 tons in 1950s, and then by 1960s, we're talking about over 800,000 tons. So that's a 400% growth in just 10 years. This growth was accompanied by an equally rapid crash. By 1970s, we're talking about a catch that was only about 150,000 tons, despite all the new technology, right? We're not talking about there's a sudden destruction of technology, sudden destruction of fishing boats. No, that's really because there was no fish to be caught. So what happened is the fish stock depleted so severely that by 1992, here, the cod stock has dropped to 1% of early levels. That's here, right? You're going from over 800,000 tons of catch to something like 8,000. But after 1992, then the Canadian government imposed a moratorium on cod fishery, which is still in effect today. So basically, think about it. That would destroy a whole industry. And in many remote regions, that would destroy the whole community. What are you supposed to do without fishery? There's nothing, right? Why would you live in a very cold place in Canada unless you have something to depend on? In the United States, there are strict limits imposed, and the limit has been reduced in recent years because even with the limit in place, the fish stock haven't been recovering as quick as people have hoped. So even stricter limit has to be in. So this is the example of common resource. Not excludable, but rival in consumption. That's our stones, right? I allow all participants to grab the stones, so it's not excludable. I didn't allocate how many stones to each one of them. It's all up for grabs. But it's rivalry in consumption, because when one person gets a stone, someone else, it would forbid someone else from taking it. It's the same as in fishery. The sea is open for everyone to catch. But when one person catches a fish, that fish cannot be caught by someone else. So that leads to what we call the tragedy of the common. Tragedy of the commons. It's that common resources are overused from the society standpoint. And it's because social and private incentive differs, right? From the society's point of view, you don't want to catch all the fish at once. You want to leave some of the fish so that they can replenish. From the private incentive, why would I want to do that? I just want to catch as much as possible. And from that perspective, what you're having is a negative externality. When I catch more fish, I'm imposing a negative externality on everyone else. Because the more fish I catch, the harder it is for someone else to catch fish. Just like in this case, right? The more stones one student grabs, the fewer stones will be left for the other students. So that's a negative externality. There's a negative externality. So common resource is a case of negative externality. The harder I work, it makes it harder for you to gain. Okay. Did I press the wrong button? Yes, I did. Now it's recording it all over again. I hate this feature of PowerPoint. Whenever you press the back button, it records everything again, right? So the blue line is the income per person for fishing. The red line is the income per person for weaving basket. If you look at it this way, you can think of it as just like a monopoly problem. So how many people would want to go fishing? How many people want to go fishing? And what's the optimal number of people to go fishing from the society's point of view? So first thing about how many individuals will go fishing. Who will go fishing? Well, obviously, as long as the income from fishing is higher than the income from weaving basket, you would expect people to go fishing. So in equilibrium, the number of people fishing will be determined by the intersection of the income from fishing and the income from weaving basket, which is here. So that's what you expect. With free entry, people would start going to fish as long when fishing doesn't bring in more income than weaving basket. How much is that? That's easy, right? That's 12 minus 2n equals 2. Which gives you n equals to 5, right? Now let's show that it's actually better for the village as a whole if there are only 3 households. Right. So I'm going to write at the bottom. So from the village income with 5 fishermen equals to, now there are 5 of them, right? 5 of them, each of them earning 12 minus 2, and there are 5 of them, so times 5, plus the remaining 5 earning $2 each. Actually, you know that in equilibrium, both types earn $2, so in total, you have $20. Okay. Village income with 3 fishermen. There are 3 of them. They earn 12 minus 2 times 3, plus the remaining 7 of them earn $2 from weaving basket. So in this case, you have 3, 6, 18 plus 7, 2, 14, so that's 32, right? Okay, so it's clearly better to have fewer fishermen because of the diminishing return. The more fishermen there are, the less each of them earn. It's much better if there are fewer fishermen so that they each earn more. So economists traditionally propose 2 ways to solve this problem. One is you should regulate or tax to reduce consumption of the common resource. So tax fishing. Or you can turn the common resource into private good, sell the rights to fishing. So both methods are used in reality. Tax fishing or sell the rights to fishing. This applies to any types of goods that have this property, any common resource. You can sell for example, for forestry, you can either tax wood logging, or you can sell off the rights to particular pieces of land with trees on them. Both methods would help to reduce the common resource problem, and we'll see why. So let's start with asking the question: is it actually optimal to have 3 fishermen? Could we do better? Than 3? And the answer is yes. Once again, you want to analyze this as a monopoly problem. From the society's point of view, you're trying to maximize your income, which is the same as what a monopoly would do. We don't like monopoly maximizing its income because in that case, it's the reduction in output is inefficient. But in this case, we actually want some reduction in effort because of the negative externality. What I do affects you. So in this case, we want the village to maximize its income. And to do that, to figure that out, we have to draw the marginal revenue curve. We want to draw the marginal revenue curve. And the marginal revenue curve is the demand curve which tries to slope. Right, so let me try to draw it even nicer, somewhere here. Okay. And the intersection gives you the optimal number of fishermen, just like in Monopoly. It's the same idea. It's the same diagram. It's because if you interpret this way, the private income from fishing is the average revenue from fishing, whereas the money from weaving basket is the marginal cost of fishing. From the society's point of view, because when one person goes to fish, he is not weaving basket. So that's why the cost, or the opportunity cost of fishing is weaving basket. Because you are either doing one or the other. Because of that, you can use the same analysis as in Monopoly in trying to balance the benefit and cost of fishing. And to maximize income, you want to use the marginal revenue curve, intersect that with marginal cost. So the marginal revenue of fishing is demand with twice the slope, right? So marginal revenue equals to 12 minus 4n. demand with thrice the slope. So what's the optimal number of fishermen? 12 minus 4n has to equal to the marginal cost of 2, right? So the optimal is actually 2.5. Slightly less than 3. What is half a fisherman? Well, that means that person is part-time, right? He's spending part of his time doing fishing, part of his time weaving basket. And how should the government tax fishermen in order to reduce their numbers to the optimum? If the government wants to tax, this is what it has to do. So the government, this is the part where I should. Do I have my wallet with me? Okay. This is the part where I really want a ruler. You know, I believe so. The next update, the next big update of Windows 10, they would build in a ruler into Windows 10, kind of what you have on iPad Pro right now. But right now there's no ruler, so it's very hard to draw a straight line. So I'm just going to use a card. I see. It's very straight. Right, so that's what you want. You want to reduce demand by the amount such that the fishermen, there will be naturally just 2.5 fishermen. Right? So how much do you need to tax in order for that to happen? So this is private money from fishing after tax, right? That's private income from fishing after tax. It's very long, so I kind of just, so maybe I just shorten it. Okay, just let me say, wait, no, I don't. Okay, never mind. So let me try again. Right? So that's what you need. How much is that? Because I skipped the page, so I'm just going to write here. You can write it on the previous page if you want. How much do you have to? How much tax has to be imposed? What we need is this. We need the private income after tax for 2.5 fishermen equals to $2, right? Private income after tax from fishing, not fishing, fishing with 2.5 fishermen has to equal to 2. That is weaving basket. Right. And the income from fishing with 2.5 fishermen after tax would be 12 minus 2 times 2.5. That's the income from fishing with only 2.5 fishermen without tax. Now we ask them to pay a tax, so minus the tax, equals to $2. So tax has to be, so 2 minus 2 minus 12 minus 2 times 2.5, that's 12 minus 5, so that's 7. 7 minus 2 is 5. In other words, you have to tax $5. I just write 5. Okay, you have to tax $5. If you tax $5 per fisherman, then naturally there will only be 2.5 fishermen, because any more, the income will be so low, it's not worthwhile. So that's one way. Tax enough, you naturally reduce the number of fishermen, because you reduce their income. It is also possible for the fishermen to come to an agreement themselves. Like, look, the market is too crowded. We're all suffering. Too much competition. So let's do this. We're going to have 3 of us are going to stay, 2 of us are going to leave. The 3 who stay will compensate the 2 who leave. Something like that. Okay? Something similar. Now, in this particular instance, in order to calculate the amount that the remaining fishermen should compensate those who are going to leave, you have to ask, is it enough to just compensate the 2 who leave, 2 who are going to leave? Or do you need to prevent other villagers from becoming fishermen, right? Because naturally, in equilibrium, there will be 5 fishermen, and that's too many. 3 of them can ask 3 of the 5 can ask the remaining 2 to leave. That's okay. But after they leave, will other villagers come back in to become new fishermen? That would defeat the whole purpose, right? What you want is to limit the number of fishermen. If there's still free entry, it's not going to help by paying 2 fishermen to leave, because other villagers can come back in and become fishermen. So you have to think about how this works. And that depends on how you interpret the reality. Is there free entry? If there's free entry, then it's a different question than if there's no free entry. Now, we're just going to assume there's no free entry, right, at this moment. Let's just say there are 5 fishermen. And then 3 of them are going to pay the remaining 2 to leave. How much do they have to pay? Why would anyone voluntarily leave? Well, that must be because they get paid enough. They get paid enough such that leaving is as good as staying, right? Being a fisherman earns quite a bit of money. So you want me to leave? You have to pay me. So what we're going to have is money from staying, the income from staying has to be equal to the income from leaving. Right. Once again, I'm assuming that there's no free entry, so that the other villages are not going to become new fishermen. That would change the math. So I'm just going to assume that there are only 5 of them, 2 of them are going to leave, 3 of them are going to stay. That's it. Okay, let's see what happens. All right, let's see what happens. So how much money do you get? Those who stay get 12 minus 2 times 3. They're only 3 staying, right? They have to pay some money. And let's say each of them pay like P, right? Okay, they pay something, P, to a compensation fund. And the compensation fund is paid to those who left. Now, after they leave, after they leave the industry, they're going to get $2, right? So from weaving basket, plus they get compensation from the fund. How much do they get? There are 3 people paying into the compensation fund, only 2 people drawing from it, so that's 3p divided by 2. So now you can solve for what's the amount needed in order to convince people to leave. P equals to 6 minus P equals to 2 plus 3P plus 3P divided by 2, multiple both sides by 2. So you have 12 minus 2P equals to 4 plus 3P, which gives you P equals to 1.6, I think, right? Yeah, that's right. That means That means if the 3 fishermen who stay each pay $1.60 into a compensation fund, the 2 fishermen who leave would draw 1.6 times 3 divided by 2, that's 2.4, right? Each fisherman who leave would draw $2.4 from the compensation fund. Overall, they will be equal in terms of their income in this arrangement. That way, they would be willing to leave, because even though I leave the fishing industry, I am still earning as much as if I stay. Okay? So that would work. So, once upon a time, economists would think that you either need tax or privatization. That's the only ways you can do it. Either the government has to tax or regulate, or you need privatization. Turns out that wasn't true. Modern research has shown that cooperation among stakeholders often work better than government intervention. So a meta-analysis of 47 farm irrigation systems finds that, so meta-analysis is like a study of different studies. So based on many studies, it was found that 5 out of 12 government-managed systems were efficient, that's 42%. 18 out of 25 farmer-managed systems were efficient, that's 72%. Turns out, kind of against what economists' intuition used to be, when people cooperate among themselves, it's actually much more efficient than government intervention. Because government intervention is usually not very flexible, right? And it involves bureaucracy. Private cooperation works better because of that. That's what's earned Elinor Ostrom her Nobel Prize in 2009. She's relatively she's not very famous in economics, but she won the Nobel Prize for her work in this area, showing that actually strategy of the commons is not such a big problem as we might think. The capacity to overcome dilemma and create efficient governance occur far more frequently than expected, and depended upon the structure of the resources itself and whether the rules in use developed by users were linked effectively to the structure. In all self-organized systems, we found that users have created boundary rules for determining who could use the resource, choice rules related to allocation of the flow of resource units, and active forms of monitoring and local sanctions of rule breakers. Basically, you have social norms. People come up with social norms in order to maintain efficiency, right? Why do you want to be polite? That's a social norm. Why? It facilitates communication. It makes our society more efficient if you're polite, right? It won't be a very efficient society if we all try to argue with each other every single moment. So you develop this culture of politeness. So that's the same idea. There are community norms and industrial norms which are meant to maintain efficiency, right? And that wasn't considered by economists before.